No more empty cups. Good evening, and welcome to this special edition of Mental Health Mondays, brought to you by Saving Grace Community Church in Grace South, Cincinnati, a ministry of Saving Grace Community Church and nonprofit. Joining along with me tonight, as always, our very faithful and loyal and very knowledgeable counterpart, Dr. Quentin Moss, President, CEO, Founder, Chief Medical Director of Modern Psychiatry. Good evening, my brother.
Hey, good evening to you. Good evening.
Well, my brother, tonight is certainly a reminder as we discuss our topic, the power of love, surviving a breakdown. Today is a reminder of perhaps you and me and those some may be watching of days gone by where at one point or another, we got our heart broken. And certainly Brandy in that introductory song, which is a classic about being heartbroken, laid it out in terms of feeling lonely and wondering if one can start over again. Tonight is the beginning of our month-long series, The Power of Love. A long time ago, back in my undergraduate studies day, when I studied marketing or psychology or sociology, there was always the social scientist and theorist pyramid, Abraham Maslow, hierarchy of needs. And one of the needs that he said that everybody needs is love. And I find that to be most true.
Mm-hmm.
As I look at how God and who God is in him of himself, the Bible says that God is love, and that is an attribute, a characteristic in which he shares with mankind. But certainly I understand that. But for some of us, the very basic question tonight is, it's a need, but why do we really need love? Why do we need love? What function emotionally or psychologically, Dr. Moss, does love serve?
You know, I think that as man was created and as man has, tried to find a way to sustain existence on this earth, there's no way that you can do it without love or relationships. The love creates a bond which allows for us to be able to procreate, right? To make more of us, and that's vitally important. Our ability to sustain relationships allows for us to have ingenuity, but also protection. Right? We're able to accomplish more when we're together. We're able to gather more when we're together. We're able to defend off enemies and predators when we're together. And I think that we have come over time to be able to use those attributes of love and relationship to allow us to continue with this existence. And I think that's what, God created us to have and to be. And our biology, even when we go through what happens with the brain, neurotransmitters, and all those things, they reinforce this that we already know, that it wasn't good for man to be alone. And hence God gave us what we need in here, and we've taken it from there.
I think you can identify, and I'll just be transparent. I even before having an understanding and awareness of that biblical truth, I think I understood it when I was in the second grade, and there was another second grader that I was checking out, and I think it went a little like this. Okay, she loves me, she loves me not. She loves me, she loves me not. Right. She loves me, she loves me not. She loves me, she loves me, she loves me, she loves me. That has to be it.
Right.
And I think that was the beginning or the understanding from the way God made me for that attraction, and to say, hey, she's got cute ponytails. Hey, I like those hair balls in her hair. This has to be love. And so I think all of us have those experiences, and we probably can call the name when we first said, well, if you like me, check this box. You want to be my girlfriend? You want to be my boyfriend? Check this box. And I think that we all had those little childhood adventures. But as we have grown up, you mentioned it was is very critical that God did not create us to be by ourselves. He did not create us to live in isolation, but he created us to be socially conscious and to have relationships. I'm reminded of that poem or even that song that no man is an island, no man stands alone. And the fact that God created us to be interactive with him and to develop relationships with one another. And so I thought about that. And so when I think about tonight, certainly that was a classic song, but I think about, that song, I think Michael Jackson said Heartbreak Hotel. And for many people, though they may have not actually gone to a physical location, but they experienced that emotionally, and they traveled to that place. And so when I think about tonight, why is it so important for us to get over heartbreak?
I think that psychologically and physically, it's the longer we stay in that process, is damaging. When we think about termination of relationships or romantic relationships, it's very much like losing a loved one to death. There's that grief process. And that grief process has, all of these stages. But the more prolonged and entrenched that grief process becomes, then it starts to affect our mental health. It starts to affect our physical health, our ability to manage other types of relationships. So it ultimately leads to our detriment. So we don't want to be in the process of moving things along too fast for this process, right? But there is a place where it can become very unhealthy for us and create a great deal of harm.
Heartbreak, breakups is something that affects people of all race, creed, and ages. And it affects us in different ways, and can be very intense for some and be for others very short-lived. But tonight we asked about a couple people to respond to the question in relationship to being, have you ever been heartbroken? And if you have, how did you meet the person? Why did you break up? And what happened after that? Here's one of our first respondents to that question.
So my last relationship was actually a long-term one. It was 3 years. We started dating in high school, junior year in pre-calc. We were studying together, and it was very much a high school sweethearts type of relationship. But we graduated, went to college, and quickly realized that we turned out to be two very different people with a lot of different interests, and that's okay. But we fought a lot. We tried to fix it, and really took a toll on both of our mental health. We struggled a little bit with school and keeping up with everything, but we were determined to make it work. But at the end of the day, we both realized it was better to move on than to keep hurting each other. And so just recovering from that, I think it was definitely sad for me. It was bittersweet because I was so relieved that it was over, but at the same time, breakups just aren't easy, and they never will be. But I spent a lot of time with family and friends and just people who I knew loved and cared about me no matter what, and their support meant everything.
There's so much to unpack in that brief snippet, but one thing is revealed in that is that coming to the realization that the relationship you're involved in just might not work out. That every romantic first encounter, every cute interaction and foundation laid in relationship does not necessarily guarantee that there will be a happily ever after some time. She spoke about so much, but one of the things that came clear is the fact that in relationships, coming to that point where you realize things are not working out, And as a clinician, can you speak to that moment
Mm.
to some who may be wrestling that are trying to make something work? They're trying to force a sale. They're trying to push a block into a circle opening. Can you speak to that about when to know? Certainly for her, she recognized that it was a toxic relationship.
I think that's going to be different for everyone. But
Mhm.
there are two things that stand out for me. One is in being in this relationship, how much am I compromising who I am and my identity?
Mhm. Mhm.
When we think about the whole emotional and infatuation and attraction that goes with relationships, over a course of a long-term relationship, that may ebb and flow. They
Yes.
can ebb and flow from 1 week to 1 week. So it's very
Mhm.
difficult to make decisions based upon that. But when there is an encroachment or a compromise of
Mhm.
who I know is the integrity of me, that
Mhm.
scenario lets me know that maybe this isn't the right pairing.
Mhm.
And the next thing is if it just becomes unhealthy.
Mhm.
If we are starting to develop very unhealthy ways which cannot be fixed,
Mhm.
or it's becoming unsafe in a way where
Mhm.
there is unfortunately some form of abuse that's going back and forth, whether it's mental or physical for sure. Those are some red flags to let us know that, hey, this isn't where I need to be. And in order to preserve myself and be true to myself, I may have to make a hard decision and moving on.
And in that clip, the young lady, she came to that realization that the relationship was toxic
Hmm.
and that it was began to affect her physically, and then toward the end there, feeling sad and just making her affecting her. But I like the remedy that she sought out for herself, and that is that she surrounded her people, surrounded herself with people who were able to affirm her
Hmm.
and to meet that I need love, to meet that need.
Right.
Though, because we understand that there is eros, erotic love, and phileo. These are Greek terms for love, brotherly love, and there is agape, which is unconditional. And so, speaking to that, moving from the eros love and into the, well, familial, if you will, brotherly love, and to receive that. So it was as though she was replacing one love with the other,
Hmm.
for that need to be met. Speak to the sadness that often accompanies, if you will, a breakup.
As I mentioned, people who have a breakup are often in grief, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in grief of not being with that person. Even if they initiate the breakup, we still
Mm-hmm.
experience grief. But there's also the grief of my effort in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There is that context too. So I'm grieving the image of marriage. I'm grieving the future at one point that I thought that I would have. So that can be associated with a great deal of sadness. And when we see folks who suffer through breakup, we were able to actually, to some degree, measure that with
Mm-hmm.
neuroimaging.
Mm-hmm.
So we can test for areas that may light up while someone's going through a breakup and they're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that relationship. And what we see areas that light up that are associated with physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that people often in very difficult breakups have a lot of physical symptoms that are associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
We also see areas in the brain that light up that are associated with craving and addiction. Those areas also light up in the midst of breakups. That sense of withdrawal,
Mm-hmm.
and then these areas that are associated with attachment, they
Mm-hmm.
also light up. So this is all of the you talk about sadness, but these are all of the despairing emotions that people associate with a breakup. And we understand why, for some people, it can be very difficult. But some of the remedies are associating ourselves with a safe community and
Mm-hmm.
being able to get the validation and love for those people that we trust.
To our viewers, we really want you to ask questions if you like. If you are single, if you've struggled yourself with a breakup, or you're on the verge of a breakup, please feel free to add in the comment section. Um, there are stories of couples that have been together for 50 years, and one spouse dies,
Mhm.
and the other one shortly dies after that,
Mhm.
who may not be displaying any kind of physical distress,
Mhm.
but because of the weight of that loss, they die. Do you believe in dying of a broken heart?
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
And for sure, and there is, there are conditions in medicine that actually associate with this, that
Mhm.
people can develop a broken heart syndrome,
Mm.
from the death of someone, that their heart physiology actually changes.
Wow.
And in those people is actually, they're very difficult to treat because there's no one medication that's going to help that heart to rebound the way that it needs to rebound. So
Mhm.
yes, there is a phenomenon in medicine where people do develop heart conditions
Wow.
secondary to that level of grief. But there are a lot of other things
Mhm.
that take place when we been in a
Mhm.
relationship for a long time, particularly if you've been married for
Mhm.
decades and that person's gone. What we anchor our days and our habits around
Mm.
are typically with that person.
Mhm.
And with that person gone, our routine is gone.
Mm.
So our
Mm.
sleep is disrupted, our
Mm.
eating is disrupted. Some of the things that we used to do physically to take care of ourselves, those things take a back seat. So there are a
Wow.
number of factors that may come together as to why we have a person who they're together with their spouse, and their spouse dies, and then we see a few months later that somebody else may pass on. Some people say, well, they lost their will to live. Well, that's kind of complicated, but there are a number
Mhm.
of factors that are a part of that will to live that we start to slowly melt away if we don't have intervention and help for those people
Wow.
to recognize that.
So it's critical not to really be attentive to people who, to attentive to folks who have been in a long-term relationship and suddenly one spouse dies. And so what I hear you saying is that the actual heart rhythm, or if they were to take a EKG, it may differ
Yeah,
before the death of a loved one and after.
that's right.
That's eye opening to me, and I'm sure to a lot of our viewers, that's eye opening as well. Um, but there are times in which there are intense and real reasons to really to leave when you have that in your when you're able to do that. One of our participants wanted to lend her voice, not her face, to her experience and testimony to break up.
So I'm going to do this video recording. I'm going to try to do it in 2 minutes. I met my ex at a bar, and after that, I called him maybe 2 or 3 days later after he gave me his number. And then after that, we hit it off very well. And so we decided to start dating. And after 6 months of dating, everything was great. There were no concerns. Showing each other affection, showing that agape love that we both had for each other. We decided to get married. And so we got married and everything was going well. I mean, every now and then there was something that came up, but in my eyes, it was not nothing that I thought would cause for a divorce. But after maybe a year, things started to change. He wasn't as affectionate as he was before. He at times was standoffish, and at times there would not be any type of intimacy, maybe for a week or two. And so after year 3, he asked me for a divorce. He had told me that basically he was saying I was holding him back from becoming who he was trying to become, and that the only way that he would be able to become who he wanted to become was to divorce me. And so that's how we broke up. He had said it was for finances. He was the one that asked me for the divorce. He had said it was for finances. And then I just looked at him and I said, okay. Because I was not going to show him any kind of emotion or any kind of satisfaction, even though I did hurt inside. So that is the story of my breakup.
So, Dr. Moss, this person shows up. She is vetted through your intake process and shows up in a session a session with you. And her story is not uncommon, unlike many of those who are in fit her demographic. What might be the first thing that you offer her by way of guidance and counsel?
Well, I would want to know the impact that this divorce has had. Where has this possibly taken away her joy, her ability to function, her ability to engage with other people, and how deep does that go? And has it reached a point that there have been, clinical implications because of this breakup? Does this person now suffer from a depressive episode or has developed an anxiety disorder because of that breakup? And if that's the case, then I would like to get them into counseling and therapy to address that, to see if we can understand how this has affected her. But also, we have to realize that many of the relationships that we have, romantic relationships that we have, may have a tie-in to relationships that we've had previously, and sometimes relationships in our family of origin. So has this termination, how this relationship ended, has it then started to echo previous relationships and previous hurts? And so let's see if we can get a handle on that to stop the bleeding, and so that we can try to get some reframing around that.
How important is it to maintain your identity and your uniqueness in a relationship where it seems as though the relationship is trying to change or alter who you are?
It's a good question, and I think that's different for everyone. But the relationship should, in its best, right? If we would have the best relationships, it allows for one person to be the best them, and that person also encourages the other to be their best self, right? So everyone becomes able to be their best selves, and that sometimes takes growth. But there's also, on the other hand, a great deal of negotiation that happens in relationships, right? So as we are together, there are certain things that I must understand that you need from me, and there are things that you have to understand that I need from you. So there's that. But when it starts to really pick apart, where I say our integrity, that I cannot in good conscience have these type of behaviors, or this is so far away from who I am and what I've hoped to become, that now I'm just terribly uncomfortable. I really don't even know how to address myself at this point, because I have changed and yielded in such a way that I'm not myself anymore.
Wow.
And so that's pretty dangerous. So people lose ambition, people lose drive. They lose these other things that help to define them, meaning these other relationships. They go to the wayside, right? So these other social networks that hopefully that were healthy, they may go to the wayside because of how this person has been redefined. So those are also, dangerous signs. But, a lot of people will say this, and you've heard this too, that people will tell you who they are somewhere along the lines in the midst of the relationship. And it's up to us to determine how much attention that we want to pay to that and how much we want to vet that.
And I think when a person is determining if they want to end a relationship under that context, it really is about looking at how much of the imperfections or idiosyncrasies am I willing to put up with?
Yeah.
In other words, how much do I understand this person will not be an exact clone of myself, that I'm willing to embrace And I always challenge couples in premarital counseling, especially, that you know that you're really in love when you can love the things that drive you crazy about that person,
Yeah.
and that you're willing to deal with them, and you are entering that relationship really realizing that which drives you crazy may never change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens in relationships, we say, oh, well, I'll change that later in them. It's an old song. My mom and my mom, used to sing it to my father. And I know I didn't quite understand as a child, but I knew why, as an adult, why she used to sing it. So whenever my father would say something about her, my mom would say, "Don't go changing to try to please me. Don't change the color of your hair." It was a couple thing,
Yeah.
It was old Barry Manilow song. So I used to get weak off of that, but now as an adult, I really understand it. It's a good thing to know. Some relationships, in terms of what leads into the factors of them ending, are severe, and some are just very basic.
Yo, what's up, Pastor T, Dr. Moss, Avery here, and I'm gonna tell you all about a little relationship I had. So I met this girl on actually New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day, I guess, the start of 2016. And I was out with some friends in Columbus, and it was just me and one of my best friends, actually. We were leaving one location to catch up with the rest of our group. So we're walking out the door, and as we're leaving, walking in the door is this girl and some of her friends. I happened to hear her tell her friends as we passed by, "Oh, he's cute." So me being, quick to respond, I kind of stopped her in her tracks and said, "Oh, I'm what?" So we got to talking, grabbed a drink and exchanged numbers, not much more than that. Well, 2 years later, now 2 years after that, come to find this girl's in my suggested Facebook friends, and she's doing a residency in Cincinnati. So, of course, I hit her up, and we ended up going out a few times, and yeah, just getting to know each other. It was one of those new things that lasted a couple of months, and she got a job in Cleveland. Things settled down. A few months later, I hit her back up, and she's working in Cleveland, and I started kind of talking to her a little bit more. We were seeing each other for a while. All in all, the whole thing, I guess, lasted maybe 4 months, the second time around when she was in Cleveland. We eventually stopped hanging out often, just because of distance. She was far away, and we didn't have a whole lot of time to commit to seeing each other. It hurt a little bit, but I think there was a mutual understanding and kind of agreement that that's what was best. We still keep in touch too, so
Through those comments, really are in line with the question that was raised by one of our viewers. Do breakups affect men differently, and how is that displayed through behavior?
Yeah, I before jumping into stereotypes, right? Because I think that everyone responds to breakups differently. But I do think that there is an expectation of how women are supposed to respond to breakups and how men are supposed to respond to breakups, right? So I think that in our culture, we assume, and that's a big assumption, which is not necessarily correct, that women are supposed to be in despair, very emotional, concerning the breakup, trying to ask numerous reasons why, almost neurotic, right? So that's the stereotype that we have for how women are supposed to respond. And men are supposed to respond in such a way that they're very stoic, reserved, not showing much emotion, and finding a way that it's just done and being able to cut ties very easily. But I don't think that that's the way that it occurs. I think that each person is different.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of it has to do just with our own idiosyncrasies in our biology that make it different, our family of origin, and how we maintain relationships there, and what we saw as patterns
Mhm.
that plays a part. And then, what we have as some of our, personality characteristics and where we draw strength, that
Mhm.
also plays a part. I would note that the woman who gave her voice but not her face to
Mhm.
her relationship and how it ended, she made it a point that she was going to make sure that she didn't give any satisfaction. She wasn't going to come across as emotional, anything like that. She was
Mhm.
going to try to maintain that. And I bet you we can find some men, if you were to interview them, and they'll probably tell you, yeah, I didn't sleep for a week and I
Right.
couldn't function and I was
Right.
tearful. So I think each person is very different, and it's probably best not to try to measure ourselves up to these stereotypes when we go through the process.
That's good advice, because certainly every person responds to similar situations, and I don't want that to be missed. What you said, that a lot of who we are and how we respond has a lot to do with the environment in which we've come from.
Hmm.
And I do believe that we are products of our environment. So if we're in a family unit which relationships were broken and all day long, and people were coming and going, then when there is and more so, not just romantic relationships, but any relationships where there is a rift or problem, for many, it's not let's make up, let's flee. Let's not fight for it, let's flee.
Hmm.
But Dr. Moss, it has been awesome tonight, and I really feel within my spirit that folks will help through the conversation. And I'm looking for more great discussions as we continue this month with the topic, the power of love. And next week, we will be talking about the dating game, how difficult it is to date someone and find the right person. So, to all of our guests, to all of our those who provided snippets, we thank you so much. To those who have viewed and shared with your heart and with your time, we thank you. But as always, until next time, on behalf of myself and Dr. Moss, we encourage you to feel better, become better, and live better. Good night.